Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tomás, and it's my genuine privilege and pleasure to welcome you all to our first ever event here in Hyderabad. The first time actually I was in the city was in 2015, and I must say it's changed a lot. So for those of you who are from Hyderabad, I have to congratulate you on all the development in the city. It's quite extraordinary and something proud to be of, especially of India's development. But let's put that aside. I'm super excited to host our first ever community event. For those who don't know who don't know us, we're a startup based out of, we are a remote company, so we're not really based anywhere specifically, but we do get together from time to time, and gosh, this is a big picture, but we had our first summit last year in December in London, and we had another summit in Berlin, actually just 3 weeks ago. I'm here joined by a couple of my colleagues in the back there. If you want to say hi, just so you know who they are. We got Rohit, we got Vikas, we got Vishwanath, and we got Shaurya. And we got other team members sitting in Berlin, sitting in London, sitting in Moscow, who unfortunately couldn't join us today, but you can connect with them online if you wish to. We've got an exciting agenda for you today, but before we run you through that, the topic of today's event is AI and statistical programming. And it's a topic that for me is fairly close to my heart, because the last company that I worked at, we built AI systems, but not the traditional AI systems, but something in the field of symbolic artificial intelligence. And so before we get started, I want to set the tone a little bit for today, because I feel that especially with when it comes to decision makers and leaders, when you're thinking about building software and thinking about choosing your architecture, specifically thinking about what are the learning systems that you're using, it's really, really important to understand the context in which AI sits, and really what do we really mean by AI. And as a side note, most companies, and I guess we would be guilty of that as well, will use AI as a marketing tool rather than an academic tool. But I want to set the scene a little bit to go back in time. So the field of artificial intelligence, can you hear me well if I speak like this, by the way? Yeah? Okay. The field of AI, from an academic standpoint, can be described as the rise, the fall, and the meteoric rise again. And that's something that sometimes people forget. So if we go back in time, all the way back to the 50s, there was this paper published by Alan Turing, which really set the tone and the scene for the AI industry. And that was a paper called Can Machines Think? And that led to an explosion of a lot of hype and a lot of promise of AI in general. This is the time when computing was still a very niche field, but there was such incredible advances being made. And there was a quote that's famous still that said, around 1970, that said that in 3 to 8 years, we will have a machine with a general intelligence of an average human being. Now, fast forward 55 years, that statement seems a little bit funny, but it shows the enthusiasm as early as the 70s. And that period of the 70s is by some referred to as the good old-fashioned AI, but more generally you can refer to it as the time when symbolic artificial intelligence was particularly popular. That means rule-based systems, expert systems, and deep neural nets were not popular. They did exist. The math was introduced already back then, but amongst other reasons, the computing power wasn't there to really make that really happen. And then we had a period of that we can call the AI winter, where not a lot happened, and there was a lot of criticism of the field of the academic field of AI and its promises. That eventually, but there was a big breakthrough. If you know, in 1998, I think it was, Deep Blue from IBM did beat the best chess player at the time, which again hyped up the field, but it never hyped it up as much as it was in the 70s. Now, fast forward a little bit later, in the 2010s, you had the ImageNet competition with Jeff Hinton and his team, who beat the state of the art in image prediction by so much that it set the scene for a new AI boom. And especially in the early 2010s, we had recommendation systems, Netflix, and then a couple of years ago, in 2017, we had this very quiet paper that was released called All You Need Is Attention, which introduced the transformer for the first time. Initially meant to be as an architecture to build translation systems, which worked really, really well. But it was only OpenAI that eventually led to the popularization of the current crop of AI systems, which is LLMs. And this is the time that we are in today, where even for me, I thought AI had sort of reached peak hype in 2019, 2020, that even for me, as someone who's been in the field, I couldn't believe how big it became. And now we are even discussing the idea that you can actually have a learning algorithm that we can call a master algorithm. Where you stand on that debate, I'm not an expert, I can't really comment on it, but I do want to hopefully pique your interest a little bit to think about these things, because there's great scholars that will have very different opinions on this. But at least the field, or at least LLMs in general, and the rise of generative AI have brought this question to the rise, that how close are we to artificial general intelligence, and also what is understanding? If you ask some of the folks at OpenAI, they'll be very bullish about LLMs and what does it mean to understand. But then if you speak to some of the scholars that were around more into the symbolic AI area, well, they would argue LLM is just a really, really good prediction system. The final thing I want to say is, for those who are interested to read a little bit about this space and get a high-level introduction of all the different fields that exist, there's this great book that I always like to recommend, which is called The Master Algorithm. Now, this was written pre the Transformer. So the author is Pedro Domingos, great professor. He's got some good talks as well, for those of you who want to take a picture. And he really describes the field of AI in layman's terms. So even if you don't have a CS background and you want to understand a little bit about the space, especially the context and the history, he describes very eloquently, without actually too much math, the 5 tribes, as he calls it, and that's his view, not my view, that's his view, the 5 tribes of learning systems. You got the symbolists, you got the connectionists, you got the evolutionaries, the Bayesians, and the analogizers, each of which have a different way of learning of systems. I've worked a lot on the symbolic side, and I'll just say a couple of words on the symbolic side. The symbolic side, effectively, you try to create symbols to represent the real world and try to predict new symbols based on existing facts of the world, which is a very different way of how a neural net would work, which falls on the connectionist, which is based on probabilities. You try to predict something else. So that the one thing that I would try to convey before we start with our first talk is this idea that you have deterministic system and a probabilistic system. So when you're building software and you're trying to use any sort of machine learning algorithm, you really, really want to understand what's the nature of the prediction. And then build your architecture based on that. That's not an inherent judgment of the system, whether it's bad or not. It's just understanding, does that fit to the requirements of what we're building. The clinical trial industry needs effectively almost deterministic outputs, because we're dealing with data that makes decision based on life or death. If you get a recommendation for the movie, for your wrong movie in the evening at Netflix, it's probably not such a bad thing. But if you predict the wrong type of data in your clinical trial analysis, that's a pretty bad thing. So the agenda today, I'm pretty excited about the agenda we put together. We got Sanjeev all the way from London speaking to us today, giving a high-level overview of AI, and again, hopefully getting us thinking about some of the challenges and limitations, and opportunities, of course, as well. But I think because the world has so much has hyped up AI and really LLMs so much so. I think it's really, really important to talk about the challenges. Not to say that LLMs are a bad thing, but because we've been so educated about what they can do that it's really, really important to have the balance about what are the things that they're not good at. I'll be the next speaker after that. So we'll talk a little bit about the work that we're doing at Verisian and how that relates specifically to validating predictions, validating code. We'll then have a lunch session, and then my colleague Vishwanath will present, we'll do a tutorial. So for those who want to learn about our work while eating, you're most welcome to bring your food here. So we'll sort of 50 minutes into lunch, Vishwanath will do a demo. You're most welcome to join that, or just stay there and have food. Feel free to do whatever you wish. We'll then be joined by Raja and Arpita from my good friends at Point Cross, who flew in from Bangalore last night at an eventful flight. And they'll be sharing some of their exciting work at Point Cross as well. And we'll finish up with a panel with Lakshmi and Anik. Unfortunately, Ramaya isn't able to make it for today, but I'm very excited to be able to discuss with you guys some of the challenges and opportunities and your experiences in the field. So a few final thoughts, a few final comments before I wrap up this introductory session. We're trying to build a community, and we're trying to, at the same time, we want to build it with you guys. So if you have thoughts about what you want to see and what you want to get in terms of learning resources, come to me, come to Vishwanath, come to anyone from our team, whether it's blog posts, webinars, what are the things that we could do to foster more of a community in Hyderabad, both online and offline. We've got a bunch of webinars that we've already done over the last couple of months, and we'll be doing more as well, but would love to get your feedback on that. We have 2 webinars that are coming up. One of the speakers is in the audience right now, James. And so he'll be presenting some of his work on the 17th of May, and then on the 24th of May, the week after, we have Bayer presenting their work on Verisian as well. So if you are interested to attend any of those webinars, we have those coming up as well. So that's it. I'll pass on to Sanjeev, and very nice to see you all.